All right, what's up, Liam? So, just to get started, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Imagine you're kind of the protagonist in a movie, or even a TV show, and tell me about yourself, how you got to where you are today, and give me kind of like your comic book backstory, is what I like to call it.
Okay, I guess the best way to put it is, I do everything. So, I started off, just working, just kind of getting into what I'm doing now. Just found a passion and just went for it. Whether it was gaming or, being a chef, I just kind of took every route I possibly could, when it came to that and didn't stop. So it's like, cooking wise, just made connections with people, sought out like apprenticeships and just took every opportunity I could to like learn when it came to stuff like that. And then like in the gaming world, it was just more like it just kind of happened all of a sudden. It wasn't really necessarily like something I was seeking after, but I saw all these opportunities by people who just kept hitting me up. So I just kept, playing with them and whatnot. And, through that, I made more connections with other people and, just kind of got me to where I'm at today. Practice makes perfect, or progress, I should say, not even perfection, because perfection is not necessarily acquirable. But it's been nice. It's been really cool just being able to see like the community come together whenever it comes to helping those out who don't necessarily know where they're at or what they're doing. So I guess that's kind of like where I'm at right now is just kind of pushing myself to, grow more in the aspect of not necessarily like gaming, but like of figuring out where I'm at and like pushing myself to the best version I can possibly be.
Cool, man. That's actually pretty interesting. So, you mentioned a little bit about being a chef and obviously
Hmm.
gaming, which is kind of where we met and where I know you from. So,
Yeah.
just a little context, I guess, is the first thing to ask. Your name is Sir Chef Liam. So, kind of
Yeah.
where did that come from? How did that kind of mix come to be, and where did we go?
Oh, okay. So this is a funny story. So I was working as a sous chef one of the days at the restaurant I used to work at before I became a private chef. And my email says Sir Liam Ethan in it. And my boss was making fun of me one of the days because of the header I had for my address, email address. And I was like, it's actually Sir Chef Liam to you. And then like just kind of stuck out of nowhere. So everyone kept calling me Sir Chef Liam at the restaurant. That was my nickname. So I was like, I gotta make this like my branding. Like this is me now.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it was
So,
just
just for a little context, what is sous chef? Just for people who
so
might not know.
so a sous chef is basically like the second in charge. Sous chef is like the right hand man of the head chef itself, the executive chef.
Cool, cool. So, how did you kind of find your love for cooking?
It's kind of funny. So I moved to Arizona about almost 4 years ago now, and through that, I was only 16, and I just was looking for a job wherever I could find one. And I had loved cooking before. I wasn't the greatest at it, but like I knew how to cook or whatever.
Hmm.
And I got found a job at a restaurant, just doing some dishes and prep work. And through that, one of the chefs there saw potential in me. He said he wanted to bump me up as a line cook. And so I was like, okay, I can do that, making extra money, cooking some food shouldn't be that difficult. And so through that, I learned that, I love cooking a lot more than I actually thought I did initially. Um, so basically, just kind of worked hard, and eventually they bumped me up to sous chef. Did that for a couple years, and then through that, made a lot of connections just where I live, and started doing catering and cooking for private parties and whatnot. So just kind of happened out of nowhere, just because of one experience.
Cool. So, kind of this, I guess, the same type of question, but in terms of COD now. So, how did we
Okay.
kind of go into one gaming? I'd love to know kind of how you first got into gaming and kind of how you got to the place you are now. And also why you chose COD as kind of your main driver, main game to kind of focus on.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess like it all started, years and years ago. I don't even remember when. It's been a while, but um, I just always grew up playing video games. It started, as little as Minecraft, Terraria, and whatnot, just kind of playing like that. And then it wasn't up till I think 2020, whenever I first just started, kind of started streaming and playing with a couple of my, IRL homies and
Hmm.
whatnot. Play Fortnite and whatever. But I guess Call of Duty started back for me was Black Ops 2 was whenever I started playing that game initially, and I didn't play a ton. I played like a little here and there because obviously wasn't that big into Call of Duty itself. I was more into like other games and whatever. But I guess right when Modern Warfare 2019 dropped was kind of when I started playing Call of Duty a lot more and more. Wasn't the greatest at it. I was maintaining a 1.5 to a 2 KD throughout the
Hey,
entirety of
above average.
MW. Yeah, so it wasn't the easiest, but playing on a 65-inch flat screen TV also probably didn't help with that either.
Definitely
So,
not.
but I really started taking it a lot more seriously whenever I got my first PC. Especially now, like within the past couple months, I've been pushing myself to get better and better every day. Um, but throughout all of Warzone 2 was whenever I started realizing, what, there's ranked mode now, and there's potential to like prove myself and show off my skills a little more. And I had my ups and downs. It was a learning process throughout the whole thing. With new movement and new computer and new controllers, and just trying to learn like different things of like play styles and adapting and whatever.
What do you think the
Um,
hardest part about like getting better and kind of getting it adapting kind of from where you were at a 1.5 to 2, right? Because that process is pretty hard for a lot of people, especially people who maybe don't have as much time to play.
yeah,
Kind of like how did you approach that? Because that's a perspective I can't really take. I've always kind of been super sweaty. Um,
yeah.
so
No, that makes sense. So one thing that really stood out to me was back in OG Rebirth Island was one thing that Joe said was confidence is key. If you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and get out of them, you're never going to improve. You're never going to get better. So always push yourself to just the max every single game you play. Otherwise, you're never going to improve and learn from your mistakes.
yeah, that's
So that's
one
kind
thing
of
I see a lot of. Not to cut you off, but I see a lot
no,
of
you're good.
newer players do is that they like to like hide in corners and kind of play slow, but that's not actually
Yeah.
helping you improve, right? The more gunfights you
Nope.
get into, is the better you're just gonna get. I feel like that's probably the simplest way, but then when you're already at that level, right? So you said you're at a 1.5 2 KD. So when you're at
Well,
that point, like, or
I
you
used to
were,
be. I
sorry.
was. Yeah. I'm on
Um,
a 3.5 now. So
yeah. So
just a
where you were
comparison.
though, like how did you kind of move past that point, right? Because a lot of those people who are at the 1.5 or 2 range, they're kind of already pushing people, right? They're kind
Yeah.
of already trying to fight. So where do you think good places to improve would be?
Play with better players than you. Play with people who know what they're doing because they will push you. One of my buddies, Eden, I used to play with all the time back in Warzone 2 in ranked. We would play ranked a lot, and he would always be like pushing me to like engage in fights and you know tell me to like basically stick by his side or whatever, just so we can get those clear out those rooms and take out the squads together. And I would say playing with better players who know what they're doing, just kind of getting you in those uncomfortable positions as well, is really going to help you improve not only as a player but as a teammate.
100%. I could not agree with that more. I probably think that's like the probably the one piece of advice I would give to most players is find people to play with, but at the same time, that's freaking hard sometimes, man.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of younger kids and things like that. It's hard for people to kind of find squads to play with. I know you're kind of a advisory, I think it is in one shot, so I'm sure
Yeah.
it's usually a bit easier to like find people. But I always recommend people to like try to use discords and little things like that
Mhm.
because I don't know. I mean, finding a sense of community with people to play with and spend time with, I think, is always pretty important. So, moving in, you obviously you're playing Warzone 2. I think that's when we actually met, kind of
Mhm.
making moves and stuff like that. So, how do you actually feel about Warzone 3? The release of it, and then also kind of where we are today, right? We've had only a few metas. The RAM and the HRM are still dominant after a very long
Pretty
time.
much.
Honestly, it's kind of similar to Warzone 2, where we had the RPK and the Fennec for just a huge amount of time. So,
Yeah.
kind of how do you feel from the start and to where we are now for Warzone?
So when it came to the start of Warzone, Warzone 3, I guess is what we can call it. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't like the movement change was nice, but it felt sloppy, it felt slow. Um, and just the map itself just it didn't play very well. And I would even say like coming to where we're at now, like there's all these invisible barriers everywhere. You're constantly running into some sort of graphic issues no matter what. There's packet bursts almost every other lobby. People are having connection issues, and I would just say the game at the where it's at now isn't necessarily where I would love to see the game to be at. It's got so much potential. I was even talking to a couple of my buddies last night about this. This game has a lot of potential, and I feel like they're just not listening to the player base.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things I said was it would be really cool to see Activision move in the direction of where it's um, by the players for the players. So like whatever the players think as a group um, is pretty much how the game should be, especially if it's such a competitive game with such large prize pools. I feel like the game shouldn't necessarily be like only what the devs see it to be, but like what the players also see it to be. Because this game has tons of potential. But with the cheater problem right now, with the server problem right now, with connection and all that, with all the terrain being bugged out here and there, like I said, invisible barriers. There's just not much about the game itself that's like super duper competitive. And like I see tons of people playing in tourneys here and there and trying to play ranked mode, but just in my opinion, ranked resurgence does not it's not competitive whatsoever. It is the
Okay, so
most
follow-up question to that, right? Because
okay.
I don't love the ranked resurgence. It's something I'll play because it's ranked, it's competitive, it's something
Right.
to play
Yeah.
for, right? I by far love the big map. Even when Rebirth originally came out, everybody was like, "Oh, this resurgence mode is so cool." I was on Verdansk. Like I didn't touch Rebirth, because the big map is just the way I know how to
Yeah.
play BRs, right? It just makes the most sense to me. So, have you heard about the World Series of Warzone kind of moving to a resurgence standpoint? Because I'm
I've
not
heard
sure
about
if it's
that.
confirmed, but I do think it's definitely a possibility. The fact that last season was Resurgence, this season they brought in um, Rebirth Island, which for Resurgence ranked, and I feel like it's kind of prominent. A lot of people came back to the game for it. So, what are your thoughts on kind of if World Series of Warzone was to take that approach?
So I actually do believe they did confirm that they were going to do that.
Okay.
So honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Will I play in it? Yes, I probably will. If I find a team that has the time, wants to make the time. But personally, I just
I
feel
think it
like
might be duos, by the way.
that's even better.
I think it might be duos.
Personally, I don't think it's gonna go well. Just because Resurgence is it's basically a glorified TDM match. That's all it really is. There's nothing competitive about it. It's just repeatedly spawn die basically.
Mhm.
I mean, if you land in and you die right off rip, you're pretty much chalked the rest of the game. Especially when you're in a lobby with such a high skill level, like let's just say like Shifty, Biffle, Sage, Soka, Skullface, like all those people are in that lobby, like every single pro is in that lobby. And you die right off rip, you're gonna have a hard time regaining. It's
Yeah.
pretty much impossible at that point. Unless you get that flow at the start, you're not gonna get very far. So that's where I'm kind of like, it doesn't make sense to have such a small map with a respawn to like play as a championship, like at a
Hmm.
championship level versus like big map. If you die, you can reset somewhere because there's always a spot that's never going to be contested. So it's just I don't know. It's just like there's nothing competitive about it because you have chances to respawn and stuff versus like when you die on big map, it's going to be harder to get bought back because there's going to be teams pretty much at every single buy station. It's a lot more competitive versus running in, getting a couple kills, dying, and respawning instantly. So
So, how do you kind of feel about the idea of kind of having different maps for ranked? Like, what if they came in and had big map ranked and resurgence ranked to kind of accommodate both types of players?
yeah, I feel like that would be good just because you get best of both worlds. Like if you're not a big map player and you want to play ranked, you have that option. If you're more of a competitive player or like don't necessarily like the resurgence aspect of the game itself, you can go and play big map. I just personally don't think they need to take competitive Warzone to resurgence. I feel like it should stay as like a battle royale type map versus a resurgence type map.
Yeah, I don't love the resurgence aspect, but I see why they have a lot of attention on it. I would love to see kind of similarly to how you said the competitive nature of Warzone right now. I don't think it's great. The cheaters, there's tons of cheaters in every game right now, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super upset about the cheaters. While I hate it because it's a terrible experience as a good player, because when you run into a cheater, instantly you can tell when you're a good player, and
Yeah.
it just makes the experience of playing like this is stupid because I'm playing ranked and I'm just dying to someone who I shouldn't be dying and losing rank to, basically.
Yeah.
Um, So, kind of where are you looking for the future of Call of Duty? Like, what are some things that you think they could bring that would actually really improve the game?
Hmm. I would definitely say just listen to the players, like honestly. That's like I'm not quite sure like when it comes to the game itself, it would be really cool to see like every other week or something like meta change. Because
I 100% agree with you. I think changing meta is super important. I think the reason they choose not to change the meta is because of all the casual players who have to spend the time to level up guns. I think it
Mhm.
just takes them too long to level up a gun. By the time they do level up a gun, it ends up affecting like, oh, now I have to level up a new gun, and then it just like ruins their like will to play almost. So I think
Yeah.
having a longer meta is kind of beneficial for them, but for people who are playing consistently like me and you, it kind of takes away the fun from the game almost
Yeah.
because we're using the same
100%.
thing every single day in ranked.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think meta changes would be really cool. Have you ever thought of the idea, or do you think it would be cool if there was something more consistent, kind of like cash cups in Fortnite?
Yeah, actually, I do think that would be really cool if Activision would, host tournaments like that, on like a bi-weekly basis, if at all possible. Because I know if a company like Epic can, host tournaments like that every single week, in whatever, it would definitely bring a lot more players to the Call of Duty scene because there's a lot more to play for rather than just pubs and, SR and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's cool and all. It's fun, but it's only fun for a certain amount of time. It gets old, it gets repetitive, and I feel like Fortnite has done a great job at, for one, keeping cheaters out, and two, keeping a competitive player base every single year. Versus Call of Duty, I feel like there's consistently like new people coming in and out of the scene versus Fortnite, where pretty much it's the same people since day one. And you have your new players here and there coming into the scene, but it's been very consistent throughout. Fortnite's since Fortnite ever came out back in what 2017. So, but I think it would be really cool to see some sort of cash cup come to
Yeah,
Call of Duty.
I think it would be a great idea. From my understanding, the way they kind of run tournaments, at least in the U.S., is that the Activision kind of has marketing budgets for the US and EU. That's why we tend to have a lot
Mhm.
more tournaments in NA compared to EU. That's why a lot of EU people kind of get upset about it. But
Mhm.
there's definitely a lot of like community tournaments and things like that. But I feel like the difference is that when it's like on a leaderboard or like where everybody in the game can see it or anybody in the game can participate, like you said, I think it brings a little bit more of a competitive nature to the game where like even back when they first came out with Cash Cup, in Fortnite, like I used to play with my friend and we knew we weren't gonna place anything or do well
Yeah.
in it, right? We were just playing it because we were like, oh, like how many points can we get? Like how well can we do?
Yeah.
And it was just for literally the fun of it. And I think things like that, like even with World Series of Warzone when it came out, people got calling cards and different things like that.
Mhm.
Little things like that really, I think, bring a lot of engagement. And I just don't think COD does enough of that, to be quite
No,
honest.
not at
I
all.
feel like there's so many little things that they can be excelling on, similar to like LTM modes, where they should have new LTM modes every few weeks and bring
Mhm.
different things in. Um, Even things like Specialist, which was one of the funnest things in my opinion, for
I
like a
agree.
good player. Like there's tons of things that they literally have created, things that they could do, but I feel like they don't take enough advantage of it. Um, Even a cool idea I have, I'm not sure if you've thought kind of about the private match scene and how Warzone works with private matches, but
Yes.
um, just the fact to even be on a map or even like a gunfight map, but with Warzone settings, I think would be a cool way
Yeah.
for a lot of players that don't have the full game to be able to like practice or just shoot each other. Like you don't have to add bots or a ton of crazy things to
Hmm.
make like I understand they want to make money. That's fine. But at least have a little private match where 5 people can join up or 10 people, something where that competes with Fortnite's like creativity mode where like
Hmm.
you can play regular matches with 4 people, sure, but you can go into creative and play a match with 15 of your friends or 10 of your friends and get a bunch of people and play something. You don't need to have a minimum amount of players on your
Yeah.
private
Yeah.
lobby to be able to play, right? And I think that pulls a lot of like the creation away from the player, and it doesn't. have as much of a sense of community. But kind of what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are little things that you think they can improve to kind of bring a little bit more engagement from people?
Yeah, no, so I do agree. I do think that like having private match in Warzone itself is pretty cool, but I feel like having a minimum requirement of players for a game mode like that, like you said, if there's a casual player who doesn't necessarily have the best skills at the game or they want to improve, but they don't want to always play, Warzone itself or don't have the full version of the game to practice in multiplayer. I feel like having some sort of like private mode on smaller maps like that would be pretty cool to just play like with a group of your friends, whether they're good or not. You're just not gonna, get better if you don't put time in and practice like that, especially against people who are better than you. Um, I do feel like being restricted to only, um, the battle royale and the ranked mode itself is kind of lame. Like you said, going back to the custom game modes as well, I
Hmm.
feel like that would be really cool to like lean into more, especially when it comes to the casual player base. Because I feel like just running in and doing the same thing every single game is boring for some people. Um, but I don't know. That's just my opinion, my thought
I,
on
I
all
mean,
of
I
that. So,
100% agree. I think things like Michael Myers, like little games that
mhm,
people can play, like I feel like having a small map like that that anybody could play, I think would
mhm.
make it way more fun for the casual
Oh
player.
yeah,
But I think that
100%.
the main thing they're trying to do is it's sad to say as much as it is, it's kind of just a crash grab
Hmm.
for people to just buy the full game and have things like they haven't even come up with like prop hunt since like Cold War.
No,
You
they
know, it's
haven't.
like there's so many things that they could do that they just don't. Um, but I guess maybe they just don't get enough players and things like that, and they just maybe not care for it. Obviously, we don't have the numbers and figures of the statistics that they have. Um, but yeah, so uh, tell me if I'm right or wrong, but you're part of a team or an organization for gaming or something like that?
So I used to be. I actually just recently quit for that team a
Oh,
couple
wow.
days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically going over a little bit of that. I used to play for a team called Dire Rebellion. Nothing wrong with them. Just the state of the game itself is super uncompetitive right now. That the demand they were asking for like clips and streams and all that, I just wasn't able to accommodate for like for them just because of my time and just the amount of effort I had to put into such a smaller group with really no compensation back. It just was weighing on to me a little too much, so I decided to step back from that and kind of just go solo for now. So I mean, nothing wrong with the group; they're a great group. I still talk to them, but just as of right now, it's just not for me. But hopefully in the future, I can find something.
Cool. So for a lot of like a younger people or people who are looking to kind of get more into gaming, and looking for a team, I've heard of a few different types of deals and kind of how they're structured. Like what's the core benefit in your opinion to kind of doing something like that, that rather than someone just making content, creating their own brand and kind of doing things themselves, or obviously doing both, right? Kind of meeting with a team and being a
Mhm.
part of something.
So I would say, for one, it's nice to be able to have a community around you who's supporting you consistently, helping you get those numbers up. So like for example, anytime I would stream, post it on Twitter, tag them in it, and all my friends and all the people on the team itself, they would always be there to like kind of get you out there a little bit more, so you could gain a little bit more viewership and whatever, and a little more support. I'd say that's definitely a plus of being on a team. Um, Another thing is you always have all these other connections with a lot of other people to like guess play with versus just um the same group you've normally been playing with. I mean, I have a huge variety of people I play with regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really, I don't necessarily depend on that, but it's nice to have other people there to like support you in a sense.
Yeah, so I know you've been talking a little bit about like the state of the game and how you're not enjoying it too much. So,
Mhm.
kind of, are you looking at playing any other games or kind of moving in any other directions right now?
So as of right now, in my free time or like whenever I'm not playing the game, I'm just goofing off on other games like Lethal Company or Escape the Backrooms, content warning stuff like that. Warzone is still going to be my main game. That is going to be a game that I will, I see potential in myself. I want to get to the, climax of where I can, and grind for that because I know I can get somewhere with this if I really push myself. but finding time to play other games versus just consistently playing Warzone every single day for hours at a time, I feel like it does help out with um, playing the game itself versus you're not getting your head stuck in the loop of the same thing, every single day. It's good to be able to change everything up and find something new to explore versus just Warzone itself. I find it's refreshing to, play something new here and there versus, like I said, playing almost every day for hours at a time.
Cool. So Liam, just a little bit of curiosity, I guess, or not curiosity, but can you give me kind of your socials and if people are interested in kind of finding you or looking into more about you, can you kind of give me some of your handles on some of your different platforms?
Yeah, yeah. So I have on everything it's just gonna be Sir Chef Liam, no spaces. It's I have Instagram I'm working on, TikTok, trying to work on. I mostly just use Twitch and YouTube as well. So you guys can find me there. Appreciate the shout out and all that. But
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
trying to work on getting some more content out. It's kind of hard when it comes to this game because I feel like everything's like so repetitive when it comes to other content creators. But I'm trying my hardest to keep it original. So appreciate that.
That's the biggest thing you can do. That's kind of why I started the podcast, kind of just trying to make new moves, meet new people, and the idea really isn't to be focused around Warzone. It's kind of just focused around different things. And I already knew who you were. I feel like we had a pretty mutual respect for each other, and I thought it would be a
Oh
cool
yeah.
idea to kind of start reaching out to more people that I do know,
Hmm.
to kind of get kind of good conversations with people. I feel like keeping up connections with people is pretty important. I hope we can definitely play sometime. Maybe some
No, for
ranked or even
sure.
some pubs, whatever. It'd for sure be fun, and I appreciate you kind of coming on and spending some time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you hitting me up, bro.